Max Richman is with me today, President and CEO of the National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare, ncpssm.org. And we've been interviewing doctors all morning. I could call you a doctor, too. You have a doctorate.
Juris Doctorate.
Yeah, there you go. Okay. Max, welcome back. It's
Thank you so much, Tom.
And give me your take on, and I should say, you were a former staff director of the Senate Special Committee on Aging, 16-year veteran of Capitol Hill, and the president and CEO here of the National Committee. What are the issues and concerns at the front of your mind right now?
Well, the Affordable Care Act, there's a lot of misunderstanding, a lot of myths about the program as it impacted Medicare. But the fact is that there are tremendous improvements in the Medicare program by virtue of the Affordable Care Act. Mm-hmm. Improvements in treatments, improvements in out-of-pocket costs, improvements in the solvency of the trust fund. All of those are likely to disappear if the Supreme Court, in effect, guts the Affordable Care Act. And let me just mention quickly those improvements. Since the Affordable Care Act became law, for the first time ever under the Medicare program, a beneficiary can get all types of preventive screenings, cancer, diabetes, mammogram, colonoscopy, with no out-of-pocket cost. An annual wellness visit with a physician with no out-of-pocket cost. Dramatically reduced prices for out-of-pocket costs for prescription drugs. And the solvency of the Medicare program, we're always concerned about that, is extended for 7 years. All of that could disappear. All of that is at stake, and that's, to answer your question specifically, that's what I'm concerned about.
Yeah, it's a very serious concern. The United States Supreme Court is, in my opinion, wandering in a territory that they have no business wandering into.
Not the first time.
Yeah. I mean, this is Bush v. Gore all over again.
Yep.
I believe. This is something it's not part of their purview. I mean, you're an attorney. You would have a better understanding and perspective on this than I would. What are the possible outcomes here, and how do you see them playing out in terms of healthcare policy?
Well, I think ideally what we would hope to see is that the court, by whatever margin, will conclude that the Affordable Care Act, the subsidies in the Affordable Care Act, whether they're state exchanges or the federal exchanges, are lawful.
Right.
And I think it's clear from all the testimony, the debate, the record, the legislative record, and it was a tortured trip, if you remember.
Oh, yeah.
And the bill passed in the Senate by one vote. I mean, a lot of arms were twisted, and it barely became law. But there was no discussion about this from any committee staff, from a Congressional Budget Office, Office of Management and Budget, and there were some pretty intelligent experts that looked at this all the way through. This was never an issue.
Right.
It was assumed that these exchanges could be subsidized regardless of whether they were state or federal. And I think that the court is incumbent upon the court to look at some of that intent very, very closely.
Yeah, it seems that the hope is that the court will apply the Chevron doctrine, where they explicitly, in '84, I think it was, Chevron versus FEC, or
I think that's right.
Yeah, the court came out and explicitly said, just because, now this is me paraphrasing, but just because a law was written poorly, was constructed poorly, doesn't mean that it has to be wiped off the books by a court. If the court can determine the intent of the authors of the bill, and even if there's something in the bill that contradicts the outcome of that intent, we go with the intent, not the specific language that might have been in error.
But that was a different composition of the court. We're looking at a different court now, and I'm not sure that logic will prevail. I hope you're right, but I'm not sure.
That was before the court was run by crazy right-wing whack jobs. I mean,
well, you said
I'll say it, not you. Yes, I noticed here a couple of things that Sean had mentioned. The National Committee's Eleanor's Hope initiative?
Yeah,
Can
you
tell me
know,
about that?
we have spent years defending Social Security. Most recently, from President Bush's privatization efforts. You remember that?
2005. I got my political capital. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, you remember it. I remember it because we were sitting in our office in our little boardroom off the Capitol Hill the day after President Bush was reelected. And he walked out to the podium. We were just curious what he was going to say. And he said, I've earned political capital. I'm going to use it to privatize Social Security. Right. We about fell out of our chairs. We knew we had our work cut out for us. But we followed him wherever he went. We didn't have Air Force One, but we followed him as best we could, either in person or on radio, newspaper ads, and National Committee to Preserve Social Security, I think, was one of the leaders in that effort to stop that movement. Yeah. But
he was hell bent for leather for that. I mean, that was the single thing that he ran for Congress on in the 70s and lost.
Absolutely. Maybe he was trying to redeem that loss.
I think so.
But he failed in that effort, and I think that. I think that it may take a few more years, but eventually Social Security, Medicare, and the Affordable Care Act will all be looked at as part of the fabric of our society, and it'll be very difficult to mess with those programs.
Don't you think that they're looked at as the fabric of our society by the vast majority of Americans
Absolutely.
right now?
We have done polls and surveys for the last few years by very reputable pollsters. The vast majority of Americans, young, old, middle-aged, Democrat, Republican, Independent, support Social Security and want to improve it. The Boost Social Security campaign that we've embarked on, the Eleanor's Hope that you mentioned, which would improve benefits for women who live longer, have lower benefits, shorter work histories, and have lower benefits, depend on it more. We need to improve the program. It's time to do that.
I'm with you, Max. Hang on just a second.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-536-2370.
That was Max Richmond?
You got it?
Yeah, the President and CEO of the National Committee to Preserve Social Security, ncpssm.org.